guess you didn't know that you can make your own sandwich bread from home, and you probably already have the ingredients in your cabinet. The last time I bought sandwich bread from the store, it was $2 extra, and it tasted like wax. You can do so much better, so let me teach you how to make mine from scratch. So the first thing you're going to need is a Yukon Gold potato, and we're going to peel that potato until it's completely skinless. By adding potato starch to our bread, it's going to last longer and it doesn't get stale, and you're going to have a shelf life for about 2 weeks if you put it in the refrigerator, and even longer if you put it in the freezer. So we're going to peel this completely. You don't want any of the skin on the potato, and we're going to wrap this tightly in some aluminum foil. We do not want the potato to burn. This is going into a 400-degree oven, and it's going to be in there for an hour. While that's in the oven, I'm going to get my dry ingredients together. I'm going in with some all-purpose flour. All of the measurements will be in the description below as well. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and some sugar to my all-purpose flour. Now I am using kosher salt, but if you're using table salt, you might want to cut your salt intake by half. You do not want your bread to be too salty, but after that, we're going to add in a little bit of diastatic malt powder. I'm just going by grams. This is on the scale, by the way, but I'm adding in my diastatic malt powder. I'm going to mix that together and then put that on my mixer. Now let's get our wet ingredients together. I have a half stick of butter, and I'm going to melt that down. While my butter was melting down, my potato was ready. It's been in the oven for about an hour on 400 degrees, and as you can see, it's ready to be mashed or rice. In this case, I'm using a potato ricer. I'm going to rice that potato so it automatically combines into the water when we add our water to the butter and potato mixture. You want it to completely dissolve. You don't want to have big chunks of mashed potato in your dough. But as you can see, my potato ricer did the job, and now I'm just mixing it a little bit together. And as you can see, it looks like mashed potatoes now, but it's going to look better when we add our water. And like I said, you want your potato to dissolve in the water, and you don't want it to be actual mashed potatoes putting it into your dough. So now all I'm doing is mixing in my water now, and I want the potatoes to completely dissolve. Like I said, we don't want big chunks in our actual potato dough. Potato starch is really going to give us that sandwich bread texture, but we need one more thing to add a little bit more enrichment to it, and I'm adding in 1 large egg, kind of beating the egg into our potato water mixture. Once I'm satisfied, I'm going to add in my dough attachment to my mixer, and now I'm going to stream in that water, potato, and egg mixture into that flour. Now, this dough is going to come together rather quickly, but remember, it's going to have a lot of enrichment in there, so it's going to take a long time for it to combine into something strong like a potato bread. So just be patient. As you can see, it's getting all the flour together on the dough hook, and it's kind of mixing it together. And I'm going to be stopping a few times to kind of scrape down the bowl to make sure it's well combined. At this point, you want to let your mixer do your magic. Now, if you're doing this by hand, you're going to have to knead this dough until it becomes strong enough. After about 5 minutes, I'm going to take a break. And as you can see, it's doing a good job of coming together, but it's not getting all of that flour at the bottom of the mixer. So I'm using my dough card to kind of mix it together by hand before I started mixing it together again. So as you can see, now that it's got all of that flour at the bottom, it's starting to come together a little bit more. And this is going to be a long process. It's going to take about 15 minutes for this dough to mix completely. Now, I will say it might go faster if you're doing it by hand, but nothing beats mechanical mixing for me. I've done a lot of doughs by hand, and it can be tiring, but as you can see, it's all mixed together, but it's still a little dry. So I'm adding 50 grams of water to kind of make sure the dough is enriched and it comes together properly. Now, you may or may not have to do this. It depends on the humidity level in your actual house when you're mixing the dough, so please keep that in mind. But I'm actually adding in a little bit of water to kind of make this dough a little bit more soft and less kind of hard and dry and brittle. Since I added in water, it's going to add a little bit of time in my mixing process, so this is going to have to go a little bit longer. But like I said, it's really depending on the humidity level in your house. Yours can be completely fine, but at this point, mine wasn't. So you can see the mixer going on high speed to kind of incorporate that water. You can see that the dough is starting to clear the bowl, and I'm just kind of mixing it on high speed, and the gluten is developing very finely because you can see my mixer is moving, which means the gluten network is getting strong. So at this point, it has been 20 minutes in my kitchen. Now, I didn't expect for this dough to take long, but like I said, I did have to add water in there because it was looking a little bit dry. But now that I'm seeing that it's starting to clear the bowl, I'm going to give it a check. So I'm going to pull it up, and you can see it's a little bit strong, but it's still shearing a little bit when I pull it. So I'm going to actually mix this a little bit longer. So I mixed it for a good 5 minutes, but then I stopped it to make sure that I get all of the dough incorporated. So I took my dough scraper, and I'm just scraping down the sides of the pan to make sure all of the dough is incorporated. That could be a problem when you have like sticky dough on the side of your your bowl, because if the dough hook is not catching all of that, it's going to be hard for it to develop gluten. So if you're mixing by hand, you won't have to worry about this because you'll be kneading the dough by hand. But if you're using a mixer, this dough is quite sticky, so you might have to stop and do this a couple of times. After I get all of that dough that's on the side of the bowl, I'm going to turn back on my mixer and we're going to go for an additional 5 minutes. As you can see, the dough is starting to clear the bowl a little bit more, and at this point we're just going to wait for the perfect time to check it. After that 5 minutes, I stopped it and I checked it, and you can see when I pull, it doesn't tear, so that means that the dough is ready. So I'm going to struggle to take this thing out of the mixer. You can get a little bit stuck when you're mixing at high speeds, but I'm kind of putting the dough together with my dough card. I'm going to attempt to take this out of the bowl so I can rub it down with olive oil. We're going to proof the dough in the same bowl, but as you can see, it is quite sticky and the gluten is developed by me having a hard time to getting this dough out of the bowl. But once I get it out the bowl, I'm going to cover it with a little bit of olive oil, and you want to grease down the bowl because this, like I said, this dough is very sticky and you don't want it to stick to the side. So I'm taking a little bit of olive oil, putting it on my hand, and actually kind of folding in the dough. And I can just tell by how the dough feels that it's going to be a great piece of bread. I'm doing one more thing, which is performing a window pane test. It didn't pass it because it broke off a little bit early, but once I cover this with foil and let it proof, I'm going to perform another window pane test to see if it's actually ready. After about 45 minutes of proofing, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to shape it. So I'm just taking the dough out and I'm going to get all of the gas bubbles out of it. And I'm going to kind of form it into like a triangle / square. I made a mistake. I forgot to perform the window pane test before I started shaping the bread, but as you can see, it passes the window pane test. You can see me stretching it out, and you can see some light come through. That means all of the gluten is developed and we're ready to shape. So I'm going to pull some of the dough and then pull it all the way up to the top. After that, I'm going to book style the dough from side to side. So from there, I'm going to pull the dough from the sides to kind of, pull it into the dough itself. Then I'm going to continue doing that and then kind of rolling it back to build some tension into my bread. Once I get to the end, I'm going to roll it on its seams to make sure that it's all closed up. You'll also see me kind of, pinching it in. The dough is quite sticky, so it should stick together. You don't want any of these, places be open, because when you go to bake this, it could, kind of sprout and it doesn't look good. It's still going to taste good, but your bread is going to be all out of whack. I turned it around and then rolled it on its seams a little bit. And now that I've, kind of gotten this completely rolled up, I'm going to put this in a 9-inch loaf pan. And I'm going to make sure that the dough is really nestled up in there tightly, because this is going to proof for a while. So now we got to proof this for another hour, and I'm putting another loaf pan on top of it until it gets doubled in size, as you can see right here. That second rise took about an hour, but as you can see, I'm taking a serrated knife to make some cuts in the middle of the dough. If you have a bread lame or a bread razor, this would be easier. I did not have any of those, and I'm pretty sure the regular home cook don't have those right off the bat. But you're going to want to make some deep cuts so you can kind of see me trying to make sure that it's deep enough for the bread to rise. Now, if you don't make deep enough cuts, it's not going to rise properly in the oven. Now that I've made my cuts, this is going into a 400-degree oven, and it's going to bake for about 30 minutes. You take your bread out of the oven, you want to immediately take it out of the pan. If you do not take it out of the pan, condensation will get on your bread and it'll make kind of like a little hole in the side of your bread. I've done that before, so make sure you take your bread as soon as you get out the oven. Let it cool on a wire rack, but as you can see, it really looks good. It browned it really nicely. I'm going to add a little bit of butter to kind of soften up the bread a little bit. This is totally optional. You do not have to do this. You can throw this in the refrigerator. It'll be good to go, or you can cut this into slices like I'm doing. You're going to want to let the bread completely cool before you try to cut slices. This bread is a little bit soft, so when you cut slices, when it comes right out the oven, you're going to kind of collapse the dough. So make sure that you let it completely cool. As you can see, the sandwich bread looks really good and you're ready to eat. If you guys enjoyed this video, like and follow for more.